If you are jumping in to this channel, welcome. My name is DrLupo. Thank you very much for joining me. And I'm being given an opportunity to talk directly to Luke Smith following what we just saw, which is a huge number of announcements, 3 different expansions. We have a season starting today, a number of different very big plot points brought up. They talked about sunsetting in the Destiny content vault. They talked about the Exo Strangers back. There's a ton of stuff. So we do have a lot of things to cover, and I have a limited amount of time to do that. Before we get into the back and forth with Luke, I'm going to bring him up on screen, and we're going to go over the Beyond Light reveal trailer, just because an opportunity for a behind-the-scenes director's cut of what they're putting out. We don't often get that. So, hi, Luke. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity to come talk, come hang out. That was a lot,
dude. It was. I was talking to some folks before it. I actually haven't watched the full thing until today. I checked the intro kind of late last night, and I watched the trailer we're going to talk about a couple times just to make sure I had my ducks in a row. And then, you know, sitting here, I don't know if you saw, because I mean, you know, you had me. I was sitting in there, and I don't know if you saw on the camera, but during the initial 8 minutes of silence, man, I was just having a hard time. Like, you know, couldn't have done this one live because I think it would have been really tough to come out of that silent opening and get into promoting a game.
I think I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you very much to Bungie, you, everybody on the team for taking an opportunity to speak up on things that are important. I know I saw a little bit of pushback from people in chat, and while I do understand that you don't want your video games ruined, some people did sit and stare at the Almighty, as I said on Twitter, for over an hour and made it out on the other side okay. So 8 minutes honoring the life of a man that has begun one of the biggest movements we've seen in equality is absolutely huge and can never be overstated. So seriously, thank you to you and everybody at Bungie for doing that. I mean, it means, I think, more than you guys realize.
Yeah, the team did an awesome job of that. It was a shit ton of to try to get back to try to like pull myself back here. It is a shit ton of stuff we put on the table today. So,
oh yeah, I even want to say I respect the fact that the back and forth, you and Mark side by side. I saw online somebody that was 6'1" laid down between to make sure that there was correct social distancing between the chairs, which was hilarious, but appropriate as well. So.
And it was, I mean, we didn't do that at Bungie. We ended up going to a studio. There were only like 5 people there. Everyone stayed really far apart. We had masks right up until we sat down and we put them in our pockets. And, you know, I undersold the Mark thing a little bit. It's like my only regret from that is like, oh, he's like kind of a, you know, we're pretty close outside of that. Like Noseworthy Annihilate, he's like my best friend. And so I felt like I cheaped him out a little bit with my underselling of our bromance, if you will.
I'm sure he'll be okay. Now, before we get into the Q&A, I have the Beyond Light reveal trailer up, and I wanted to take this opportunity to walk through it because you brought back the Exo Stranger. She's back, and there's a lot of interaction there. So if when you are ready, I'm going to hit play on this, and you talk me through. I won't have the volume all the way up on it. So
yeah, just a little context before we play the video. When we set out to think about this expansion set and where we had been, you know, the last kind of massive event in Destiny was the end of Destiny 2, where the Traveler woke up and kind of, you realize that the Traveler maybe hasn't been dead. It's been intentionally dormant because any action would result in this, you know, inevitability. You know, with Shadowkeep, it was really important to me that we start to pick up that thread. I felt like that was a really big ball to kick. And with something like the Stranger and something like Europa, these are really things from, you know, I associate with, you know, early Destiny. And so another thing that we were looking for, even before we hired a director for this piece, it was, you know, we want to, you know, reach out across all of Destiny's history and kind of pull some stuff together to say, hey, we're moving forward here. And the director we ended up tapping is actually the same director who did the Destiny 1 Mars video. It's a guy named Ilya. We've worked with a bunch over the years. And so anytime there's like a little homage, it's totally intentional, and it's just part of Ilya's genius. So let's roll it.
You got it.
A lot of initial drama here. You can just let it run here. A lot of initial drama about getting the colors right in the pyramid ships because we didn't want them to be too threatening. This shot here with the drifter shot, this is that is a mirror of that original kind of Destiny 1. You'll see another one of these mirrors here where Eris takes a little tumble. That is exactly meant to mirror the astronaut slipping. So if we pause here on the fire, we were really thinking about how to do the stranger, because we didn't want the reveal to be totally immediate, but we also wanted it to be the kind of thing that the silhouette on a rifle would maybe tip the hand. And we entertained a bunch of different ideas here. There was one great idea from Ilya and his team where she was in an interior kind of like an ancient computer, and that looked awesome. And we ended up going with the fire because the lighting was better for concealing the character in the way that we wanted to. So then another thing we were thinking about was, when we wanted to make things that we created for the trailer kind of available to players. And so I think we've taken some of these things and woven them into pre-order bonuses for the game for Beyond Light this fall, because we do all this work to model these things, and we think it's awesome when players can get their hands on it.
So you're telling me, and for anybody that's misinterpreting that, a number of the things, the ships, the sparrows, that kind of stuff is going to be available as potential pre-order bonuses for Beyond Light and things following that?
Yeah, I don't have it all stored totally in my brain, but I think, I mean, for sure, her weapon, and I believe the sparrow is part of it too. Okay. The ship's fucking awesome. We wanted to give the Drifter kind of a different pod. Like, some of the fun of doing stuff like this is, getting to take characters who have really familiar aesthetics and give them something else. Like, I remember Mike and I talking about, like, well, if Eris is going to kind of be trudging through the frozen wilderness here, like, can we give her some winter gear? Like, kind of when you see your favorite characters from Star Wars, they have like different wardrobe changes. You're like, oh, the Han Solo parka is awesome. Like, I totally, what's Eris's version of the Han Solo parka? It's not like Han Solo parka. It's like an Eris parka. So let's see. So here, if you so you can see as Eris is walking, there are these crystals emerging, and this is indicating that she is, this plus the final scene from Shadowkeep, the kind of post-game sequence, is really indicating that Eris, a character who has been, very anti the notion of the darkness, has maybe started to explore the edges of it, and certainly looks like she may be wielding something a little bit different than you would expect.
This even looks like almost a clue into stasis, which obviously I'll be asking you questions about in a little while.
The original cut for this piece was almost 5 minutes long, and a lot of it ended up being travel. And if you just give me a little pause here, because I want to talk about this just for a second, it ended up being a lot of travel time, which Mike and Eric and I were talking about. This notion of taking our time was really important, not because of all the reveals, but because sometimes we'll have the marketing pieces, like these pieces that we put out that are really bombastic, and the pace is really fast, and I think the dungeon trailer and the like early gameplay trailer are like punchier and quicker. And we had this long cut for this piece, and then we had a shorter cut that was, I don't remember the exact time. And when people watched the shorter cut, we just didn't feel like it was giving the whole piece enough time to breathe. And of course, the 5-minute cut is like that's like Mike, Zach, and I, like being like, it can be long and slow like a Kubrickian movie or whatever. Like, and so we find some like reasonable here, and I think that we did get to this really nice length here. And this is meant to show an uncomfortable meeting between three characters. The dismount for the stranger, and into this thing that emerges from her. That object, I know we're going to have a lot of questions about, and I'm not going to talk too specifically about them, but the stranger is not forged in light. The stranger does not have a ghost.
So that's not a ghost.
That is not a ghost. That is something different, and that's kind of where we're going to leave that for now. But it is for sure not a ghost.
Towards the very end, she has a line, and if I can go back and scrub directly to it, I'm going to try.
What you here to see?
So about bringing them here to see the Dorito, one of the pyramid ships. Are we to assume that based on that back and forth, that Drifter, Eris Morn, and the Exo Stranger have a previous interaction history?
I don't think it's assumed that there's a previous interaction history. I think when we were putting this piece together, we were thinking about who is the kind of who are three characters, because Destiny, often happens in factors of three. Who are the three characters who would be most interested in the power of the darkness? And the Drifter, with all of his embrace the darkness, all of his like gambit chicanery, is a great fit. We had and then Eris, of course, is kind of also a pretty great fit. And when I was this whole idea started with the Stranger, so she was there from the beginning, because I felt like anytime you want to explore something different, like the darkness, like I said on the video, like a character who's not forged in light, and a character who's like forerun, who's like kind of pointed at this notion that the collision with the player would break ground, felt like really good opportunity. And I know people have been waiting a long time to see her again, and I think that's I think this is a great time to do it.
Yeah, you could. I think that's an understatement. As one of the characters that I don't have time to explain why. I don't have time to explain why we've wanted to see that for a really long time. The thing that's not a ghost. I'm just going to ask it outright. Are we going to be able to obtain something similar?
Not this year.
Not this year. Are you implying in the future that it would be potentially possible?
It's certainly an idea that we are deeply considering, because I think that I think it's you put something in front of people, you see how they react to it, you see if they think it's cool, and then we'll go from there. I think there's a bunch of opportunity to add super cool shit for players in Destiny, and I think that the Stranger's little buddy is I think it's pretty super cool, but our community is going to tell us what they think.
They usually do, don't worry. Between when Beyond Light is released and now, is there an expectation for the Exo Strangers, the big gap in time, to be fleshed out as to what was going on, where they went, all that?
No, she's going to kind of debut in Beyond Light. She's not going to be a part of the Season of Arrivals.
Just wanted to check.
That's good. It's your time. Let's do it.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to go through the Beyond Light reveal trailer. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say, holy crap, you guys are very good at cinematics. We appreciate you taking the time to do everything that you've done with that. But it is time to get into the nitty gritty. And as you told me before, and I want to make sure that people understand this, none of the questions that I'm going to ask you were pre-canned from Bungie. You didn't give me anything. I even told CJ, no, thank you. I'm good, because I wanted to do the best that I could to represent the community and the position that y'all have offered up to me. So thank you very much. And I'm going to start out of the gate with talking about in-game live events. We saw the Destruction of the Almighty. That was a technical feat for Bungie, proving you can do in-game globally synced live story events. Very, very cool. Many players, though, were frustrated by the duration of the event and the level of communication around when viewing said event would be essential. Will Bungie be doing more live in-game events going forward? And if so, in what ways are they going to be changed from our first experience with them?
So I think that's an awesome and totally great question. The way I've been thinking about this event, which, I think you said really well, is technically awesome. And once it kind of hit its stride, I think it's cool too. But we had these Lego pieces, and I think the Lego pieces with things like what's the timing of an event? What's the way that players come into the world? How do they know when is the best time to be there? I think about this in terms of concerts, not Travis Scott, but like if you actually go to a concert or a comedy show or something, doors are at 7:30, but if you're there to see a comic, they probably don't go on. And so I think that, once you learn that, you're like, okay, that's fine. I think we could have signaled all of that better. And at the bare minimum, we've got to signal it better. But I also think there's a compression that we could be doing with the time that we're asking people to chill there too.
A follow-up, if there are future events like that, is there an opportunity for players to maybe be a little more hands-on with the mechanics or the event playing out, because I think a lot of people, while they did go through and do all of the bounties and public events to gas Rasputin up, it very much would have been nice to be able to, even just in this case, go to the Almighty, maybe disable a portion of the shield, anything like that, where there is an interactive moment, because people often felt like they just sat there and watched Rasputin blow a thing up that they put a lot of work into before that, with no payoff.
Yeah, I think that there's two things you're talking about there, and I think they're both great pieces of feedback. Like the first one is what's like the kinetic action game part of this? Like how do I get to feel like I'm more involved actively, like on the controller or on the keyboard? And I think that's awesome feedback, and we should strive to get there. The second thing I would say is it's also about how can I very clearly understand the impact of my or the community's collective actions across the game, and so what is the like other ideas that we've talked about are how could we have made the Warmind network feel more present in the solar system at large, so that you're actually feeling on your director and your skyboxes everywhere that this is a thing that's building up over the course of the season, so that when you see those missile streamers traveling at physically real time, but maybe not like action game, that you're like, yeah, we did that. And so I think those are both awesome notes and awesome pieces of feedback. I think the other thing was, because this is a kind of our first one, it was really meant to just be kind of like, I think someone said it really well, like a cinematic you were watching with other people.
Gotcha.
Better management from us for the next time.
A lot of people in my chat are touching on crossplay, so I'm going to bring that up just super quick to get clarification so they understand. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when the next generation of consoles, the next Xbox and PlayStation release, there will be cross-play within the same the same ecosystem. So Xbox, Xbox One and the next tier, and PS4, PS5, those will be able to interact with each other initially, but not cross-platform between the two. Correct?
Yeah, the intergenerational crossplay.
Yes. And then going forward, Mark specifically said that the goal is to achieve full crossplay next year.
Yeah, that's our target. We've been signaling crossplay for a while. We had some other technical priorities this year, and we want to move on to that next. Like we want to be that single evolving world, and that means that you can play anytime, anywhere with your friends, and that Destiny 2 is the platform.
Is that, and last clarification on that, and then I won't bring up crossplay again. And that's going to be Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Stadia, all together?
Yes.
There you go, chat. I want to swing back. Talking about public events, bounties. Season of the Worthy on the PvE side felt like that was a majority of what we were asked to do. It became, for a lot of players, relatively monotonous. I mean, doing millions of these things, and that's the only thing you could do at the time to further the story, is kind of frustrating. What is the plan going forward? Will seasonal content have a stronger variety of things to do?
So we're getting the feedback as we keep going. So one of the things that I associate with player feedback around Season of the Worthy is an intentional decision that I made, which is we want to refuel aspiration in the game, and for that season, because we could only do one really big aspirational thing, we chose to do trials. And so PvE aspirational players were kind of, I think, left cold by the lack of something to care about at the top end. We've rectified that for season 11 with the dungeon that comes out today at 5, and so we're making sure that we have that. With respect to like the bounties and the amount of bounties players feel like they have to do, this is going to be a continued area of improvement for us. Like we have stuff that we are planning for year 4 that is going to give players alternate ways to make bounty-like progress on their season pass. Like that I think can lessen the burden of making it feel like the best way to play the game is to grab the random bounties till you get the one for the lost sector and then run in and out of it over like that. That doesn't sound like a super fun way to play the game. So we've got to get better here.
You mentioned that Season of the Worthy obviously had trials, was the big aspiration. For Season of Arrivals, you have a brand new dungeon, which begs the question: is there a cadence internally about PvE versus PvP for new content? Should we expect the back and forth each season? Is there going to be, or will it be split between both sides going forward for each subsequent season?
It's not going to be necessarily like a back and forth sawtooth. I think that we've talked about wanting to do a refresh to trials every year. And I don't know that we've said exactly. I can't keep it all straight. I don't know if we've said when we're doing the next one. I do know when we're doing the next one.
Feel free to say.
No, I think that we
just checking.
You know, we talked about the PvE top end kind of passively in that video that we just watched, which is, you know, in year 4 we're going to have the raid that comes out with Beyond Light, and we're also going to have a raid that returns from the content vault. And so we'll have at least 2 raids. You know, we'll have 2 raid activities next year, and you know, we've got to figure out what that aspiration looks like in there's one season basically that doesn't have something booked, and so we've got to figure out what that's going to look like.
You said a raid was coming back from the content vault. Which raid specifically?
we're gonna pull the old Vault of Glass out and
there you go
back and play there.
That's I'm hoping people are very excited about that. That seems I think a lot of people have a certain feeling about Vault of Glass compared to everything else because it was the first. You know, it's everybody remembers the first. You know. So change gears again real quick. Hardcore players of Destiny, of which, especially on the streamer side, I admit that, and I'm trying to not be content creator focused. I'm trying to look at everybody. There are a lot of hardcore non-content creator players as well. They enjoy highly repeatable content. I'm going to use Diablo as an example. You have an unending difficulty scale in which you can continue to get rewards all the way forever, basically. That may not necessarily fit into the Destiny structure, but GM Nightfalls were added as an even harder difficulty, but the reward structure for that was essentially a title that you only went after once. There was, with the exception of a small period of bug rewards, there's no reason to do those over Masters. Going forward, is there a plan to give a longer-term carrot-on-a-stick mechanic for players in that situation that have done everything? And a suggestion, thank you to Dado for making this video, was that maybe you can have titles that level up. So you've unlocked, you know, Conqueror how many times, maybe you get the level 2, level 3, level 4, something that'll give people something to do so you can show that they've dedicated a whole crap load of time to something and it doesn't affect the way that the game is played.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I'm pretty sure we're doing something like this starting soon, which is it might be starting as early as season 11. Again, like some stuff moves around in the calendar, but like gilding titles is a thing that we are working on and planning to do is one thing. I think another thing with an activity like the GM Nightfalls, which I think have a number of really awesome properties, we're going to be enhancing their itemization during year 4. I think that, you know, sometimes we're not totally sure how a thing is going to go. Like we do a lot of experimenting in this game, and maybe sometimes it feels like we do too much, but you know, we are thinking about that reward story for GM Nightfalls and believe we can enhance that pretty significantly.
Things like Tyrant Surge and other mods created some really fun and effective builds within this last season. Are we going to see mods from Season of the Worthy come back in the future, or do you plan on having additional, I mean, relatively innovative for Destiny mechanics like that that are not just seasonal? Are we gonna in Diablo you have season gear that gets retired into the main line? Do we see something like that happening with some of the mods that people absolutely love?
I think what we are, what the Armor and mods team are doing right now is sneakily some really fucking awesome work on Destiny, and the challenge might be it's a little hard to find the fun here, to like put it together and to make a build. I think that we have improvements that we can make there to make build crafting a little bit more understandable, and then I think figuring out how do we take experiments like the cool stuff from this season of the Worthy, and leverage those awesome things across the game. Like that's we got to do more of that. Like when we find something that's super successful, like how can we double down on it? Like that's, we place bets, and when the bets hit, we have to double down.
The player base has always had kind of a complex relationship with paid seasonal content and Destiny. Question, is it worth it? I see often asked pretty quickly after the first week or two of, man, this is brand new, that rush wears off. Should players temper their expectations when it comes to each new season? Should we be focusing more on the larger expansions as the target for highly repetitive stuff?
I think that this is a line we're still gonna have to find. Like we have basically a battle pass that for sure has $10 of value if you're thinking about value, but I think we also ask players to play the game a lot. And so, I think this year, we overstruck the FOMO nerve, and that's, completely on me. That's my direction and discretion. And I think I led us astray, and we're going to fix it. The other thing that you're asking though about content, I think we have to continue to evolve the way we're thinking about content. Like, again, this year we had a bunch of really cool stuff. Like Rescuing Saint 14 was a cool quest line that had a bunch of good elements in it. But I think that we ended up making, a lot of 6-player arena type activities. And, you can lay that at my feet too. Like, I think that we need a more, diverse offering in our seasons. Imagine a season where you have, we're not doing this. I'm just saying, imagine a season that's all about a handful of exotic quests. So you have a bunch of cool quest lines that season, and that's the primary thing that you're doing. I think that we've got areas to improve here, and we need to do it, and we're going to do it. But you can, you and the community can always lay the blame for the stuff that you're unhappy with directly on me. And if it's awesome, the team did a great job, and if it's not what you wanted it to be, or it's not as good, you can blame me for it.
There are a lot of different avenues in which people express their frustrations and joys from Destiny. There's a team within Bungie that is responsible for monitoring all those things, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. The our community team, and we have a bunch of surveying that's happening kind of I'll say passively, in that it's technology that's surveying reactions, seeing how people talk about the game. And so we're always looking at that stuff, and then our community team does an awesome job of showing us what's going on in the game, because it's not always the place you want to send your team to go out into the wilds to collect feedback. You want people who are focused on that as their job.
With projecting a roadmap all the way out to 2022, it does seem more and more like Destiny 3 is not going to be a thing. Is there ever going to be a Destiny 3?
I'll say we're not planning to make one. We believe really strongly that we want to build the future of Destiny inside of the Destiny 2 game. That this is the way. Is
there a plan to continue to integrate Destiny 1 content back into Destiny 2? You just say to bring it back VOG. Cosmodrome is returning, and in addition to that, is it going to be a lot of people complain, and this isn't just to Bungie, this is to a lot of different games, that it's reuse of the same content over and over again, a copy paste of old stuff, because there may not be an opportunity to innovate. Maybe you don't have chances to build new things, or maybe it's laziness. Can you explain the thought process behind bringing that stuff in, and if we should expect the D1 content to, as a whole, return to D2?
So I wouldn't expect the D1 content to return as a whole. We're not going to remake the Destiny 1. If only it was so simple as Control-C, Control-V. We're not going to remake Destiny 1's campaign in Destiny 2. We will probably never do that. But when I think about the content that we've built to date, I do think there's a bunch of really awesome stuff that is, has been lost in the dark corners of time as we've moved on. And so I think the Destiny content vault's an opportunity to, selectively pull things out of the vault. Like I will speak for myself as a player and not with my role team, but the idea of a ship landing, like heading toward a strike, and hearing the voiceover, Zavala as we go to that Imperial land tank outside of Rubicon would make me laugh. That would bring me some joy. And so I think we have content that can touch our players in that way. It's also a balancing act, because you want to keep making new awesome stuff too, and that's not just limited to our players wanting us to make new awesome stuff. It's also about our development team wants to make new awesome stuff, and so we've got to find the right line between some of our playlists feel like greatest hits, and our world feels new. So we're gonna keep exploring that.
In the future, will Bungie have maybe put forth a more concentrated effort to bring more of the lore directly into the game for a more cohesive narrative? An example is I asked before stream if anybody knew the name of the Scion Flayer that was in charge of trying to crash the Almighty into the tower, into Earth, and pretty much nobody knew Amtek's name unless you read the lore. That's one of those things about the game where if you're not constantly staying up to date on all the little pieces, and that's an RPG element that should be respected. But having that stuff put in front of you is very important. Is that going to be something we should expect in the future, or are we going to continue to have to, even just for main plot points, to have to go to the Grimoire and read?
I think it's a mix, right? Like Aramis is a character I believe that we summoned from the history of the game, and it also depends on how our lore, which is largely looking into the history, and how the lore, the narrators contained therein, sometimes reliable, sometimes how that relates to what we're doing. We do have a plan and vision for where we are trying to take this story, and we may find the lore super valuable in some respects, and in some respects it might be a zag because narrators maybe aren't always as reliable as we think they are.
With the Destiny content vault becoming a thing and retiring a portion of the current Destiny content, there's going to be people that will say that they feel like they've lost money or wasted money that they spent on content that they can no longer play. While I understand the utilization and the reasoning behind it, it obviously makes sense if you can't, update and patch your game in a timely manner. What do you say to the people that feel like they will have wasted money on content they can't access anymore?
I think it's totally that's totally an acceptable feeling. What we're trying to do, I'm not going to tell people how to feel. What we're trying to do is make sure that we can continue to grow Destiny 2 in the direction that we want to grow it, and we want to give people plenty of notification, more so maybe in the future than we are this year with what is gonna go away. And the other thing is we're setting this up in such a way that the content is going to go free in its life cycle before it goes away. And so it's not like we want to avoid situations where someone pays for something and then it just like, oh, poof, it's gone the next day. Like that would super duper suck. But some of the harsh reality here is, content that we're pulling out of the game this year, vaulting, if you will, is some content that's not. It's not. Some of it's lesser played, some of it's lesser realized. I don't think a lot of people are way through these days. And even though I think the Red War is cool, it totally represents a chunk of effort from our team, a chunk of effort from our players, and certainly a period in Destiny's history. We have to excise the past to continue with the future.
With stasis being added, I'm just going to ask some direct ones. It is a brand new subclass, so there will be 4 per class, correct?
A brand new subclass, 4 per class. What do you mean?
So you have Arc, yes. Void, Solar, Stasis.
Yeah. Yes, and a little. I'll break into jail here a little bit. These subclasses will be different than how the current subclasses are selected. They will not be locked diamonds. They are going to be a brand new model that allows for much more player choice and flexibility than the current Arc, Solar, and Void subclasses have. And this was something that was really important to me and really important to the team. So it's going to be a different way to customize your Guardian than it is today.
Those customization options, are those going to be integrated back into the current 3 subclasses?
That thing I said about experiments, like we want to see how this goes. Like I think our desire is to get to a place where players have much more flexibility with their subclasses than what they have today. But also that means that if we should someday decide to break up the classes in Destiny, that in Destiny 2, we'll probably make some stuff will probably go away as well. So we're taking that really seriously and thinking a lot about it. But right now, focusing on stasis in the new paradigm.
Is there any concern around homogenization between subclasses or balancing? Now that you're going to have 4 with with options underneath that?
Yeah, I think homogenization is, just for me, kind of an ongoing concern. But it's really hard to make something that competes with, turn into a tiny god and run around and destroy everything, which is what a bunch of our modal supers are. And so we've got to figure out what's the right balance for those things. I think that I'll kind of just talk out of church here for a second. I think that the relationship between the supers in Destiny 1 was maybe a little bit more interesting than what we have today. Where today the classes do kind of have similar versions of the same supers, and I think there's an opportunity for us to pull them apart a little bit more than they are today. But that's the thing we, again, take really seriously, because people might identify as, like, I am only a Spectral Blades hunter, aka a douchebag, and I don't want to just strip people of that either. Take that. So
rude. A number of different questions have been brought up around sunsetting and the plans, how that's going to be implemented. So I'll just hit you with a couple of those. Will there be a completely new set of weapons in the loot pool after each sunset, or will we be collecting our Better Devils version 3?
I have to look. It's gonna be a mix. We're gonna keep updating that world pool. I think we had a blog post about that with a mix of the new. We're also, the team's actively developing a bunch of new traits or perks, and so I hope that I hope that we do. I think we can do better than it's the same Better Devils you had with the exact same roles. Like, go and get it. Like, that seems that seems below our potential. I think we can do better.
Is sunsetting being implemented as a way to force players to shake up the meta within both PvE and PvP?
It's not being implemented to force players to do it. It has a knock-on effect of, as max power level goes up, certain weapons, will fall by the wayside, and at least in high-level competitive activity. And I think that has a number of good properties, even though I also know that some dissonance for our players, where wielding a gun in Destiny is different than wielding a staff or something in an MMO, because the staff is basically just glorified stats. And our weapons team, curates each legendary, very bespokely. So it's easy to find a gun, or I hope it's easy to find a gun that you fall in love with and that you love the for. And the idea of that going away, or that not being viable in 12% of activities, I guess, is hard for people to reconcile.
Is SRL coming back?
Nothing to talk about right now, but I do that people miss it. I think that it's a good question. Keep asking.
Do we have an expectation on yes or no and timing, especially with crossplay in the future for dedicated servers for PvP or a higher tick rate?
That we should follow up with a technologist. I am definitely not the person to ask about tick rates. My English degree doesn't do a whole lot of good there. Dedicated servers, though, like the Destiny infrastructure is built on a PvP or a peer-to-peer platform, and I don't know that we'll migrate the game to dedicated servers ever necessarily at this point.
You can say no; it's okay. Not that you have. I'm just saying.
I said a version of no. It's a soft no.
Yeah, we see you. Don't worry. Any plans for more Whisper or Outbreak type missions in the future?
Secret missions wouldn't be secret if we talked about them.
Touche. I think everybody can be okay with that and kind of read into it a little bit. I'm sure they're smart. Any plans for? I'm going to ask a couple easy ones because I've been hitting you with some tough stuff for a little bit. Any plans for beards on characters at all? People keep bringing up beards to me.
I mean, listen, as a furry faced dude myself, something like that would be cool, although a little weird to put on my female characters. But we're in the process of redoing redoing our face pipeline all together right now, and maybe someday down the road.
Any plans for like an auto dismantle on blue drops? No, I mean, nobody's really keeping those except for maybe one or two one-offs. A chance to just have those get filtered right into the butter churner as soon as we pick them up?
I think the real question, although, again, I'll break into jail here. The real question is, hey, when am I going to start using greens and blues again? I think that's an interesting question, because right now we have a bunch of the colors that in fact aren't used. And so, that's my inversion of that question. Don't worry, that the thing I'm talking about is not happening this fall. But that's a real design question we ask, which is, why do we have these other colors if we're not going to use them?
What's the reasoning behind some of the blanket weapon nerfs? We have outliers, high impact fusions, 150 RPM hand cannons, 140 snipers. The entire weapon class gets punished because of one or two individuals. Is there reasoning that's the way that's done?
I think historically, I'll look at hand cannons because I think that they're a weapon people care a lot about. The hand cannons would all get touched. They would all get touched because of technology. And so what the team's done this year is they have broken out the hand cannon tuning by RPM, so you can touch a 150 instead of a 180, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're trying to make that better.
Regarding PvP specifically, what's the team's design philosophy behind what their current long-term PvP pursuit is, and what should we expect for PvP specifically in, I would say both Season of the Arrivals and the next expansion?
That feels like a big question.
It is a very big question.
For us being out of time, that's a big one. We will get something in front of players this.
Perfect.
Committed.
How much longer do I have you for?
I really gotta pee. I got a rat, man.
All good. That's fine. Like I said before, there's a whole ton of questions here that I tried to hit as many as I could. But thank you very much for your time, Luke. Sincerely, it does mean a lot. I mean, you could have just not done this, which, I mean, I don't think anybody would have been happy with that. But hopefully, people are accepting of the response that you gave. Again, go to the bathroom. Luke, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Thanks for having me, Lupo. I really appreciate it.
Of course. See you, bud. So there you go, chat. Luke Smith, game director of Destiny 2. And I think I probably ran him further past the time that I originally had for him. So hopefully that was good. I tried to ask as many questions from this massive list that you guys brought forward. Hopefully, if any other channels are restreaming this, I hope I did what I could to answer your questions, field your hopes, expectations for the future. There's a lot that came out of that. A lot of people in chat were talking about cheating, and I'm going to be very specific. I completely ignored that question because there's no good answer from Luke. They've talked about it a bunch of times. They're doing everything that they can, just like every game, every developer is trying to do. They're doing what they can, and there's no answer that he could have given you, chat, that would have been both truthful and satisfying. So, again, thank you to anybody else that restreamed this. I appreciate it. Make sure if you're watching a content creator that is watching this channel, you use your Twitch Prime subs in those channels. Support those people because they took time out of their stream to entertain you, to watch me and Luke have a conversation. Very important to do. Use code Dr. Lupo. Use code Dr. Lupo. Use code Dr. Lupo. Use it now, use it now. Use code Dr.